We're about 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Scarlet Fu and Alix Steel here. And, of course, here to take you through the closing bell with a global simulcast. We're joined now by Tim Stenovec and Katie Greifeld, bringing together our Bloomberg Television, radio, and YouTube audiences worldwide to parse through the most crucial moments of the trading day. Right now, Tim, I'm looking at indexes at their session highs, save the Russell, but that's usually the case. And the VIX now below 12, so low volatility and a melt up.
Yeah, Katie was in here a little earlier talking about this being, I think she said, a boring week.
A little bit of a snoozer.
And I gotta say, not so much of a snoozer when it comes to fresh highs for the NASDAQ 100, NASDAQ Composite, S&P 500. That's the direction we're going in right now. Yeah, volume's a little light.
But that's
on
the
this
thing,
Tuesday.
Is that we're at all-time highs. Volatility is so low. I saw some stat today that it's been 300 trading sessions since we saw a move of 2% or more to the downside. You think of just the volatility that seems like it's just vanished from the market.
Yeah, and we were just talking to a technical analyst that said you may see volatility towards the election, but from now until the end, forget it. And that's why you have like Lori Calvasina talking about the nervous jumpy bull and upgrading her forecast for this year.
The jumpy bull.
Yeah, the nervous and jumpy bull.
That.
That's how she categorizes herself. On the same day that you see Truist talking about that the rally deserves the benefit of the doubt, but none of that feels like super, super strong conviction, guys.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And I guess in the absence of super high conviction and people waiting for any kind of clue from the Fed or from the data with the jobs number coming out on Friday, we're just kind of slowly pushing the indexes higher.
And speaking of, there are the closing bells. You're looking at record highs for the NASDAQ 100, and the S&P. Volume pitifully light, but we're definitely seeing the records all across the board. You have the NASDAQ finishing up by 0.8%, the S&P up about 0.6%, the Dow up 0.4%, Tim.
Okay, so far, year to date, the S&P 500 is 15.5% higher. Taking a look under the layers of the S&P 500, we did see 343 stocks, everything's still getting settled. Moving to the upside, 159 declining today, Scarlett.
All right, I'm looking at the sectors, the IMAP, and what you'll notice is a lot of green. There are some red spots, so let's focus on the decliners. You've got healthcare down about 0.4%, and energy losing 0.5%. Interestingly, oil prices started the day higher before erasing their gains and finishing lower. Among the big advancers, consumer discretionary and financials, each gaining more than 1%. Consumer discretionary getting a boost from Tesla. Communication services also up by 0.8%.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of those stocks that were pushing IMAP segments into the green today. I do want to start with shares of Tesla, finishing the day higher by more than 10%. They extended their gains for a sixth day in a row. It's the longest winning streak in about a year. The company earlier today did report deliveries for the second quarter that beat the average analyst estimates. They were not higher than they were a year ago, though. Sales were down 4.8% from a year ago. Tesla did improve when it came to a sequential basis in the vehicles that were delivered in the vehicles that were delivered in the first 3 months of the year. Tesla's up a little over 25% just in the last 6 sessions. Still down, though, about 8% so far this year. Not the only EV stock moving higher today. Shares of Rivian also moved higher. Speaking of car deliveries beating estimates, shares higher today by about 7%. Rivian shares soaring after the company reported deliveries for the second quarter that beat its own expectations and Wall Street estimates. Look at these numbers, though. Delivered 13,790 vehicles. They did see deliveries between 13,000 and 13,300. So a really small number compared to other players in the vehicle space, and certainly compared to Tesla. Rivian's still down more than 30% so far this year. And finally, Paramount Global shares gained after Bloomberg News reported that the company is in exclusive talks to sell BET to buyers that include BET CEO Scott Mills and Chen Chu, who run the private equity firm CC Capital. Paramount shares were also higher earlier in the session. This was after the New York Times reported that Barry Diller was considering making a bid. When is this going to be bought? Because
I know, right?
Think about all the different companies and individuals who've circled this company. That
hasn't been mentioned.
Yeah,
well, exactly. I was talking to Paul Sweeney, recovering media investment banker for media, and I was like, if you're in this stock, why are you still in it? And he's like, you're just waiting for the $20 share bid. And it's like,
waiting and waiting.
I mean, everybody, yeah. It's pretty remarkable what we've seen. It's been sort of around the world, right?
Eventually, that story will reach its conclusion, maybe sometime soon. We'll have to keep watching that one. Let's move on to some of the decliners, though. Have to talk about NVIDIA, of course. Biggest points contributor to the downside on the S&P 500 today. Don't have a good reason why, but I will note NVIDIA, of course, has run into some turbulence over the past couple weeks. Since June 18th, this stock is down nearly 10%. And you think about the S&P 500 still hitting record highs, maybe speaks to how resilient this market has been. So that is the biggest company, one of the biggest companies out there. Let's talk about some little ones. I did want to talk about First Watch, actually, or rather, let me go back to Webtoon, because Webtoon, it IPO'd last week. It might not be familiar to our audience yet. It's an online comics company listed last week. It had quite a debut, but shares are taking a little bit of a dive today, down about 7% on the day. And we'll end with First Watch. So this is a restaurant group. You had shares fall as much as 6.2%. That's after Stifel cut its price target to a street low, basically citing concerns about foot traffic. So it's been interesting to watch that worries about the consumer work its way into some of these specific names as well.
All right, looking at the bond market here, you're seeing definitely a bid. Yields coming down, particularly a little bit there in the back end. I mean, not a ton of news here, guys. We've seen a sell-off over the last few days, so no surprise that you might see some buying. We were talking yesterday about the 10-year hits 4.5%. Maybe that could bring in some of the buyers. We were talking, guys, to PIMCO's Tony Crescenzi, and he's like, go for the yields on high-quality bonds. They're attractive enough. It doesn't really matter when the Fed cuts rates. Don't focus on the timing. It's going to happen. Just be patient.
Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit, guys, and talk about something that's a little more close to home, I think, maybe for Alex and me and Katie, Scarlet, you two, of course. I think we all consider ourselves New Yorkers.
Kind of froze you out there, though.
Well, I live in the suburbs, so I get why he did that.
Somewhat. But, you spend a lot of time in New York City. You've heard a lot about the financial constraints facing the city, and over the last 4 years, the concerns about the city's budget. We've seen closures of libraries on certain days here in New York City, trash collection getting curbed, the frequency of that. Well, it turns out for a fourth year in a row, NYC's finances keep beating the doomsayers, and it's just not as bad when it comes to the budget as originally thought, Katie.
Yeah, the final budget is going to be $112 billion for the fiscal year that started on Monday. So the good news is that that's going to help the libraries open up again. And in addition, give some of the cultural institutions back some of the money that had been part of the cuts.
And trash pickup will be resumed. And that's important, obviously, for everyone, as well as early childhood programs will recover about 3/4 of the planned $400 million in cuts that they had put in place or were about to put in place.
Is this just all taxes? Like they just made more in taxes over the last 3 years than they thought? Is that what this is?
Part of it had to do with that, but part of it had to do with restrictions that were put on limiting stays of migrants because there was so much spending on migrants in the city.
So they spent less on that and they had a little bit more money left over.
Yeah, exactly. Less than they anticipated.
From museums. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know how that looks.
We talk about how this was a pretty bullish day for anyone who was long the stock market, except if you had a lot of exposure to the likes of Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk, because President Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders published an editorial today talking about how they need to lower the cost of their anti-obesity drugs. And if they don't do it on their own, we will do it. We'll do everything in our power to end it for them. My contention on this is for people who are having a difficult time getting the prescriptions for these anti-obesity drugs, they're going to the synthetic forms, right? They're going to the compounded versions of the drugs, which are a lot cheaper than what Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk charge.
Also, it just raises questions, and I don't actually know the answer to this, but how other countries wind up pricing drugs, because if it's a socialized medical system, is the government in essence just paying for it, in which case you're paying for it through taxes, and this is a different way of offsetting it? Like, I literally don't understand how that works. So is it an apple to apples comparison? And
one of the companies that has just, made so much money from this is Novo Nordisk, which is not based in the U.S. So you wonder to what extent the Biden administration has the same power that it would have over an Eli Lilly, which is based in Indianapolis.
These are all really good points. I will say there was some a little bit of pushback from the sell side. If you take a look at Mizuho's reaction, they said that when you think about the benefits that these drugs bring and the fact that, it is an injectable, those tend to cost a little bit more. The price of around $1,000 a month actually seems very inexpensive. Obviously, $1,000 a month, that a lot of people right now can't afford that. But again, just thinking about it holistically and how much other drugs cost, it was interesting to hear a different perspective there.
Also, an editorial in USA Today is how the president and then Senator Bernie Sanders communicated this to people.
It's an election year, man.
Talking to the people.
Yeah.
Talking to the people.
It certainly is. Hey, are you guys going to be here tomorrow at same time?
We will
same
be.
place?
Yeah, we'll be here.
Really?
But we won't be together, but we'll be
okay.
here on TV.
Yeah.
Same place, but different time.
Okay, typically what I say here on a Tuesday afternoon would be, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. But we got a holiday shortened trading day coming up tomorrow. So we're going to take a little break from our closing bell coverage, but it'll be a little bit different. So we'll see you tomorrow, not the same time, but the same place. Have a good holiday, everyone. This is Bloomberg.